Here's where I am currently on the Mughal polystyrene drawing project. I used these Sharpie markers during the early morning hours and some of the mid-morning hours, essentially working on the Mughal polystyrene drawing project while also working on editing the June 21 my dinner video project in Camtasia 2019 before my dad took me to the Wegmans I work at. As of now, I'm not finished with editing the June 21 my dinner video project. But I feel that I'm pretty close to finished. As I reviewed the audio for the raw video clips of that project, by letting the timeline in Camtasia 2019 play out, while at the same time coloring in the 5 of the 50 crate on the backside of the Mughal polystyrene drawing project, along with being on my laptop either reading one of my tabs of the browser I use for my current primary laptop, or going on Oceania and playing that game every now and then throughout the early to mid-morning hours. I recall roughly from 3:30 to 4:30 a.m. in the morning, sipping at the can of Monster Energy Zero Ultra, I got as a free sample from a booth Monster Energy had. At the Nickel City Comic-Con yesterday. Around 8 in the morning, I had with my first cup of plain coffee today. Some mixed nuts by the Imperial Nuts brand. And 3 sharp-ish cheddar cheese sticks by the Sarredo brand. Then an hour later, I had a McDonald's breakfast sandwich, a McMuffin sausage with egg and cheese, one of 4 me and my dad got. When we decided to make a stop at the McDonald's nearest to the Wegmans I work at. As my dad was driving me to the Wegmans I work at, so that I could have something more substantial for lunch during my shift, which was from 9:30 in the morning to 6 p.m. More substantial than the watermelon flavored True Power caffeine blend that my dad packed along with 2 Mallow cups he got from a local Ollie's, and some sticks of sharpish cheddar cheese from a pack he got from Walmart. That pack being by the Sarajevo brand. My dad packed that True Power aluminum can drink as those 3, now 2 True Power aluminum cans were and still are the only portable drinks we had at the time. I took my first 15-minute break around 1:30 p.m. I took my lunch roughly from 4 to 4:30 p.m. during which I had that watermelon flavored True Power aluminum can. Even though you're only supposed to drink one of those either before or during a workout and not just low intensity exercise you do as part of restocking merchandise within the produce department. Again, it was the only portable beverage me and my dad had at the time. And while that aluminum can of True Power, True being the brand name and Power being the blend name, at times it tasted a bit off to me compared to the orange mango flavored True Energy aluminum cans I've had previously. I took my second and last 15-minute break around 5:30 p.m. I got to the Wegmans I work at around 9:05 in the morning. And while waiting for the start of my shift, I sipped at a cup of plain coffee from a Wegmans generic pod from the break room. And then I sipped at a second such cup of plain coffee during the first hour of my shift. Hour or so of my shift. Followed later on by a paper glass full of cooler water from the break room. I had the 2 cups of coffee, 2 cups of plain coffee in a paper cup, which is the same as the paper glass. Just shorter. I primarily restocked the banana section and hard items section of the produce department. The banana section is at the very back of the produce department. And essentially consists of this halfway inclined display of steps made out of rubber, or at least I'm fairly sure those steps are made out of rubber. Those rubber stairs are placed atop a display mostly made out of wood, so that there can be shelves in a sense to the banana section, where otherwise the bananas would probably just slide to the bottom of the display, halfway inverted, halfway inclined display, and generally be a mess. I tend to take longer than I tend to take longer than usual to restock the banana section, as since my first shift, I've had this habit of restocking the bunches of bananas to be perfectly straight and next to each other, which some customers appreciate. But it does take more time than simply putting bunches of bananas on the banana section just to fill it up. Within the first few hours of my shift, I restocked the carrots and celery section of the produce department. Though the runner for that section, I've only ever seen its black plastic collapsible boxes have various carrot products and no various celery products. There wasn't much on that runner at the time, maybe about 5 black plastic collapsible boxes. And even of that, only some of those products could be restocked, as some products were already fully restocked. On the carrots and celery section of the produce department. The hard items section of the produce department, back to front, is right after the banana section of the produce department, and consists of various onions and potatoes. I restocked the mushroom section of the produce department right after I restocked the carrots and celery section. Those two sections are right next to each other and are more towards the middle of the produce department. There was a point in which I briefly restocked pineapples, a couple boxes of 6 pineapples for the tropical section of the produce department, and there were a few points in which I briefly restocked merchandise for the bulk wall, which is on the right side of the produce department from the perspective of standing in front of the banana section and looking towards the front of the produce department. For example, at one point I restocked a wax paper box of celery, and I banded every bunch of celery that was there prior, along with every bunch of celery I restocked from that box. And banding a bunch of celery involves just one blue rubber band. Ever since I recently started putting the band on bottom first, I've not broken any ends of any sticks of celery from any bunch I banned. Today, throughout my shift, I saw quite a few coworkers that I'm pretty familiar with at this point. I recognize their faces and their names, and it's nice to see them. And occasionally make a bit of conversation. At one point, while restocking the banana section, which generally throughout today I didn't double stack unless it was to fully use up a box I opened. Within a short amount of time, I encountered two otherwise perfectly fine bunches that had one banana that was completely black and rotten and mushy, most likely because it had been attacked by fruit flies. In both cases, I calmly pulled that whole bunch with the bad banana along with the bad banana itself. And then I ended up washing first my cut-proof gloves and then my hands. I got stressed out a bit from encountering a bunch with a bad banana those two times, but I did my best to deal with it. I pulled and shrunk those two bunches with the bad banana and threw them into the compost bin within the employees only warehouse section for those who work in the produce department. It wasn't until about 3.5 hours into my shift that I realized that the carrots and celery section and the mushroom sections were low priority compared to the hard items section and the banana section of the produce department. But I felt the need at the time to prioritize them first, since I'm currently on a sleep schedule where I fall asleep in the early evening and wake up during the early night hours, and today was no different. I fell asleep today around, I would say, 6:45 p.m., and I woke up during the early night hours. And typically you have to rotate or put product with an earlier sell by date ahead of product with a later sell by date, product within the mushroom section and the carrots and celery section, which involves more mental effort, a bit more difficult than simply restocking product within the produce department. And because I technically stayed up all night, I was concerned about feeling tired during my shift. Hence why I did what I did, but thankfully I only felt mildly tired during the last hour or so of my shift. And there was a point around noon in which I felt I worked extra hard and did my best to work quickly while still doing a good job for about an hour or so until I was done with the banana section and a cart full of product to restock for the hard items section for that time. And I think that partially occurred because a coworker expressed concerns about me taking a long time on the banana section. Here's where I am currently on Oceania.